Hi everyone, thank you for joining me. As you know, I'm building HMS Victorious, which is the 1/600 scale airfix kit, and I didn't think much of this particular ship. I've got Ark Royal upstairs, which to my mind was a much more famous ship, and I could have been doing that one instead. But the other day I decided to have a look at the information about HMS Victorious, and I've got to admit I'm very glad that I chose to do this aircraft carrier as part of the National Pride group build. Now I've got the history of her service in front of me, and I thought I would do a video purely on this. So this won't show anything further of the build, but hopefully you guys will find it interesting. HMS Victorious was ordered under the 1936 naval programme and was the third illustrious class aircraft carrier after Illustrious and Formidable. She was laid down at the Vickers Armstrong shipyard at Newcastle upon Tyne in 1937 and launched 2 years later in 1939. Her commissioning was delayed until 1941 due to the greater need for escort vessels for service in the Battle of the Atlantic. Just 2 weeks after commissioning in 1941, Victorious took part in the hunt for the German battleship Bismarck in the North Atlantic. Originally intended to be part of the escort for convoy WS-8B to the Middle East, she was hardly ready to be involved in the hunt for Bismarck, with only a quarter of her aircraft complement embarked. Sailing with the battleship HMS King George V, the battlecruiser HMS Repulse and 4 light cruisers, Victorious was hastily deployed to assist in the pursuit. On the 24th of May 1941, Victorious launched 9 of her biplane Fairey Swordfish torpedo bomber aircraft and 2 former fighters. The Swordfish, affectionately known by the air crews as stringbags, under the command of Eugene Esmond, flew through foul weather and attacked Bismarck in the face of tremendous fire from anti-aircraft guns, scoring a hit to the armoured belt with a torpedo. No aircraft were shot down during the attack, but the formers ran out of fuel on the return journey and had to ditch in the sea as the ship's homing beacon had failed. Victorious took no further part in the chase. Aircraft from Ark Royal disabled Bismarck's steering gear, thus contributing to her sinking 3 days later. Esmond received the DSO, I think that's the Distinguished Service Order, for his part in the action. In early June 1941, while part of an escort for troop convoy WS-8X, a Swordfish of 825 Squadron Victorious located the German supply ship Gonsenheim north of the Azores. Gonsenheim had been intended to support the Bismarck, but was subsequently scuttled when approached by British warships. On the 5th of June, Victorious was detached to Gibraltar and with Ark Royal and a naval escort flew off Hawker Hurricane aircraft to reinforce the besieged British Mediterranean base of Malta, Operation Tracer. Victorious returned to the naval base at Scapa Flow with captured crewmen from the Gonsenheim. In late July 1941, she escorted HMS Adventure via the Arctic to Murmansk with a load of mines. On the 31st of July, she took part in the raid on Kirkenes and Petsamo, in which 13 of her aircraft were lost. At the end of August, Victorious escorted the first Allied convoy to Archangel, Operation Dervish, in company with a force of cruisers and destroyers, and then covered the return passage of HMS Argus, which had delivered Hurricane fighters to Murmansk. During early September, she launched more air attacks against Tromsø, against Vestfjorden, and against shipping off Bodø. On the 13th of September, aircraft from Victorious sank the Norwegian Hurtigruten coastal steamer Borei. In October 1941, decrypted German Enigma signals indicated a breakout into the Atlantic by the German warships Scheer and Tirpitz. Victorious was deployed with the home fleet for their interception. This included a patrol on the Denmark Strait with the battleships HMS King George V, USS Idaho and USS Mississippi, and cruisers USS Wichita and USS Tuscaloosa. This joint Anglo-American operation predated the formal state of war between the United States and Germany. This operation continued until mid-November, when Hitler cancelled the German operation. Victorious then continued with the home fleet until March 1942. And I've got to admit, guys, that I wasn't aware that American ships were involved in operations in the North Sea at that time, so that was an eye-opener to me. Victorious returned to Arctic convoys in March and April 1942, helping to provide cover for convoys PQ-12. So PQ, I think, was convoys from Britain, that was their code, and then QP was the return convoys from Russia. QP8, PQ13, QP9, PQ14 and QP10. During these operations he also made an unsuccessful airstrike on Tirpitz, losing 2 aircraft. From the end of April until June, Anglo-American forces, including the US ships Washington, Tuscaloosa and Wichita, covered convoys PQ16, QP12, PQ17 and QP13, after which Victorious returned to Scapa Flow. The Arctic convoys had been suspended temporarily after the heavy losses suffered by convoy PQ17, when 23 out of the 36 ships were sunk. This was after the convoy had been scattered in the belief that an attack was imminent by the German warships Admiral Hipper, Lutzow, Admiral Scheer and Tirpitz. The suspension of the Arctic convoys released Victorious to take part in a last chance attempt to resupply Malta, Operation Pedestal. Malta-bound convoy WS-21S departed Britain on the 3rd of August 1942, escorted by Victorious, with HMS Nelson and cruisers Nigeria, Kenya and Manchester. Exercises were performed with aircraft carriers HMS Indomitable, Furious, Eagle, Argus to improve operational techniques. Pedestal began on the 10th of August 1942 and involved a great array of ships in several coordinated groups. 2 battleships, 4 aircraft carriers, 7 cruisers and 32 destroyers. Some of the carriers were transporting aircraft for Malta's defence, and 14 merchant ships carried supplies. In August 1942, Victorious was slightly damaged by an attack from Italian bombers. Eagle was less fortunate, being torpedoed and sunk by the German U-boat on her return journey to Gibraltar. Ultimately, Pedestal was a success for the Allies. Supplies including oil and reinforcing submarine Spitfires allowed Malta to hold out, albeit at the cost of the loss of 9 merchant ships, 1 aircraft carrier, 2 cruisers and a destroyer. In September 1942, Victorious was taken in hand for a refit that included the installation of an aircraft direction room. After trial, she was ready to participate in the North African landings. In November 1942, Victorious took part in the North African landings. Operation Torch, which involved 190 ships of the Royal Navy and 105 of the United States Navy, landed about 107,000 Allied soldiers. Ultimately successful, Operation Torch was the precursor to the later invasions of Sicily, Italy and France. Victorious provided air cover during the landings and made air attacks at Algiers and Fort Dury. 4 of her Grumman Martlet Wildcat fighters landed at Bleeder airfield to accept its surrender.